Okay, here we're going to now look at adding the render elements for some post-production on this scene, and then set it up for a camera fly animation. So we have the scene tutorial 1 complete. If we go into the render dialog, into render elements, we'll add Z depth and an ambient occlusion. And for the Z depth we'll go 30 meters. Ambient occlusion, we'll have that as a global one so that we can overlay this later on. Maybe 250 millimeters there. Now typically on this I'd maybe have a look at the floor or the walling. So if we have a final render complete render element, call that FRC floor, and we exclude everything else except the floor. So we're including the floor there. Also we'll add another complete render element, lights, and we have our selection set of light, so we'll include that and all the objects here that have the final render light shader, and part of our selection set here, they're added into this render element. We could also add a material, so what we'll do is into here, the accent colour, we can give that an ID channel of 1, and then we can either use the object ID or final render object material ID. So there we go, material ID 1 added to red. Again, you've got the exclude here so you can clip certain objects, and we'll add in the object ID as well. It's always handy to have if we want to maybe change a few things later on. And we can add in a reflection so that we're picking up any reflections on this layer, and maybe we'll go floor for that, so it's only the reflections on the floor that we can have there, and diffuse for that one, shadows. I'll go for floor again. So there's all our render elements. We can add many more if we need to. That would be enough for now. So if we go through, save the file as an open EXR, the gamma at 1, so you've got linear workflow, into setup, full float, RGB alpha, and it's automatically adding the render elements. So I'll save that there, and save the scene. That's the render elements. We'll start on a new GI solution for this, for no particular reason, just because of the way I'm going to do the camera fly later. Single frame, there we are. So we've saved the scene. I'll render away. Okay, the render's complete now. And here are all the render elements: the Z depth, the floor with the alpha channel, the ambient occlusion, the lights, object ID, the max object ID, reflection of just the floor, and diffuse of the floor. I think what we'll do is go in, we don't need the max one, and we'll delete the two, the reflection and diffuse of the floor. We have the floor there, and this to change the colour of the wall panels if we need to. Now, looking at the render, there's a few things immediately that I would be a little concerned about running a camera fly. It's the slight grain in the flooring here, and then just really wanting to make sure that all these sections are as smooth as possible, and obviously to get some more speed out of the scene here. So we'll drop our bounces to 10, the ray threshold to 5, 95 and 15 there, 116, 4 for the AA to try and keep these lines nice and clean. And again, we'll just render that off. But what we could do is we could do an interpolated blur on the floor, fast interpolation, go down. Same as rendering, seems to give the best results, flicker free for flat surfaces. Neighbouring points 4 and a high detail distance of 1 metre, so that we're going to then capture nice clean details here. The chrome, we'll just put the max distance back on again just to speed things up slightly. Fast interpolation for the wall panels with a 200mm distance, so that we're going to get a decent reflection of these t-shirts. Now we'll render that again. We have reuse checked in the GI rollout, so you can see there's fewer samples being calculated here, just samples where they are needed just to keep a clean result. We'll come back when that's done. Looking much smoother in the reflections here. I'm pretty happy with that. But what I would do would be to just maybe render out this small section as a preview first. So the next step is to set up our GI solution to be calculated over, we've got a 100 frame period here. So we're going to go to Camera Fly, Solution, and we'll call this Camera Fly there. Okay, let's run the prepass with an update from the current information we have and samples in there. So we've set our solution file, Camera Fly and update, into the output, 0 to 100, and we could probably do every 15th frame on this one. We'll render every 10th frame. We don't need to save anything there. And here we go with the light cache pre-calc, which is almost a sweep, all of the movement in one hit there. As you'll see, the yellow seat appearing here, swept right around on the floor, the lights creating these arcs. So in one light cache there you have the camera movement. After this it will do the AQMC samples, but these will be calculated for 11 frames on this. And here are the additional samples for the AQM Cebas. Not many required really, more in the reflections here, which are the red samples. You can see subsequent frames, because the camera has moved position, more samples are being shot, raised shot there. Again, 2 minutes 5 seconds for that first frame, which included the light cache pass as well. You can send this via backburner, so multiple slaves render separate frames, or distributed rendering so that you have multiple slaves working together on each frame of the prepass. It's all fully supported in finalRender. 49 seconds for that frame. I'll leave these others to render away. That's the prepass done. So we can go straight in, click on rendering there so that it is this solution that's being used. And go here and we'll just run close these REs. We'll go for this region here. For our pass. And if we go straight in here, test floor. It's always worth running a quick test of one area. Turn the REs off. It saves a lot of time if you render this and there are any problems and you've spent, a more complex shot. You may well have sent a few days of rendering on. So we'll just render this region, keeping the bucket fairly small. Whoops, one thing we need to change. Going in every frame on this, but we'll only render the first 20. So the GI solution gets loaded. And render away. We'll check this after. Okay, we've got 12 frames. So I'll look in the RAM player. Test floor. There's a little bit of sizzle and flicker in there. And there's a few things we could do here. Let's change the AMRS settings, or go into the shader and maybe increase that to 1500mm and 4-point lookup, or we can try going back to a brute force blur. 32 samples. 15 there, if we maybe change that to 10. And we'll drop that to 6. Let's have a look how we go now. The interpolated blur can be very, very good for flat surfaces, and with a little bit of tweaking in the right settings, it can be very fast. I do tend to use a brute force blur because then it's a more reliable solution. You all know it's going to work. We've not got much grain in here, so that's pretty good. Just cancel that. I just want to check one more thing in the shader. And the advanced rendering options, max trace depth of 2.1. So that's good. We could probably drop that down to 4 to limit the total reflections to 4 at the most. Maybe even 3. We've only got blurries in here. It's all about optimizing the scene to get the best render time and as good a result as you need. You can always go better than you need, but again, as we all know, jobs are needed in a rush. Deadlines are getting tighter and tighter, so it's this sort of optimization that can be very, very handy. We'll just wait until we see these buckets under this section here. A little bit grainy again. I think we'll go back to interpolated blur. 1500 here. 6 sample lookup, same as rendering. Let's just check we haven't got. We don't need the ambient occlusion on for that because we're using a global pass, so that should speed things up as well. It's just worth checking on. No, it was just the floor where we loaded up the preset. I'll let this test run. That we'll just do a smaller section just to really nail it. 32 there, and we'll do 10 to 20. The camera seems to move a little more in those frames. Right, I'll leave that to render away. Eight frames should be fine here. So it's all looking pretty good there. We've got it set for our EXR file. All fine there. Ray tracer, we've dropped the settings a bit there for a speed increase. Render elements we have. And we'll just render out these 10 frames as the EXR file. Right, we've rendered out 10 frames of this, so we'll just load it up into the RAM player. A little bit of sizzle on the floor.